Does a child take notes? Does a child take exams? Does a child memorize vocabulary in his native tongue? No, he simply listens. Antonio's HSK blues. This is a dirty word in my house right now. I'm studying for the National Chinese exam in China, the HSK exam. And my listening and speaking levels are much higher than my reading and writing in Chinese. So, although I'm going to be taking a level 4 exam, I said, you know, I want to try just the listening from level 5 or level 6 to see if I can pass it. So I sat down in the exam, and I'm listening, and I understood probably 80 or 90%, probably enough to pass the exam, but I failed, because why? The questions are written in Chinese. I couldn't read the questions. I couldn't read the answers. Although I understood, and if it had been an oral exam, I could have answered them. But because it was written, I couldn't. So it's very difficult to isolate listening. Okay, this is another issue. The English-only Bushiban. Bushiban in Taiwan is the night school. In Japan, I believe you call it Juku. And Korea is a Hakwan. In Malaysia, it's a tuition center. Singapore, a tuition center. These are where the kids go at night to learn English. After the promise, you will speak English on your first day. The other thing they tell you is the English-only Bushiban. No Chinese spoken here. Do not speak Vietnamese in the classroom. Now, what's very interesting to me is that I believe the only fair assessment of listening would be the students listen to the story in English, and then you either ask them the questions in English or Khmer, Vietnamese, in their native tongue, and they answer orally or written in their native tongue. Now you've isolated the listening skill. Show of hands, how many of you have that in your program where you're teaching?
Formally and informally.
Oh, do you do it informally in your classroom? Good for you. Excellent. Usually that's not part of the curriculum. All right? Automatic language growth, ALG. Now, I have a background in applied linguistics. I studied at Graceffo 20 years ago. And I've been doing my own research around Asia on various languages. I stumbled onto ALG method, automatic language growth. This is a listening-based program which was developed by Dr. J.Marvin of the United States. And it sort of, it's compatible with Stephen Krashen's comprehensible input. And the silent way, the natural way, natural language acquisition, all these old theories that are sort of listening-based language theories. The idea is always, how does a child learn his native tongue? Does a child take notes? Does a child take exams? Does a child memorize vocabulary in his native tongue? No, he simply listens. How long does he listen before he speaks? 18 months, 24 months, 2 years, 2.5 years before they begin speaking. They've been listening this whole time. Now, Dr. Brown broke this down, and he figured out, he said the baby's sleeping part of the time, the baby's eating part of the time, there's only certain times when they're listening, and he figured out it's about 800 hours. 800 hours of listening. Natural language theory, a child learning the native tongue. 800 hours of listening in the school in Bangkok for teaching Thai. Students do 800 hours of listening before they begin to speak. This is followed by 1,700 hours of a mix of all 4 skills. Total, 2,500 hours. Sounds like a lot. Defense Language Institute of the United States. Now, this is one of the language resources that I go to frequently. These are the guys that train translators for the government and for the military. There is a civilian arm of Defense Language Institute, which is called the Monterey Institute, which is probably the #2 institute in the world for translators. You know, my background is in translation and interpretation before I ever became a teacher, so I tend to focus on that quite a lot. At Defense Language Institute, languages are divided into categories based on difficulty. Category 4 is the second highest category. Languages in that category would be Arabic, Chinese, Mandarin, Korean, Japanese, and Pashto. Does anyone here speak Pashto? I believe Pashto would be very easy to learn. Okay, so I think they categorized it correctly. But the most difficult languages, Category 4 course in 64 weeks. Students attend classes 7 hours per day. That's 2,240 hours of class time. 3 hours of mandatory homework per 9 days a week. total program, 3,200 hours. I'm sorry? Yeah, 3,200 hours, but they're able to produce translators at that point. People, interpreters actually, rather than translators. Alright, so my experience in China, Chinese mushroom pizza. We're at Pizza Hut in Shanghai, and whenever we're ordering food, my friends kind of defer to me. Antonio, how do I say this? How do I say that? So my friend wants to order Chinese, he wants to order a mushroom pizza. He says to me, Antonio, how do I say I want a mushroom pizza in Chinese? And I go, oh, 我想要一个 pizza 加那个香菇. And he's about to say that, I said, stop. Stop. That is not how you order a mushroom pizza in Chinese. That is how I translated, I would like a mushroom pizza with, I'd like a pizza with mushrooms. Thank you. Okay, so what was the point? The point was, I was not saying what a Chinese person says. I was not saying it the way a Chinese person said. I took my English, Italian, American thoughts, and I translated into Chinese. And then what? I expect the native speaker to understand me? Why would they understand me? They might. Probably not. So you can have all the words and not know how to use them. And this is where your Japanese students, particularly Japanese, have these massive vocabularies. By the time they're at the tertiary level or working professionals, their vocabulary is huge. I even saw it in Vietnam, Taiwan. Students had 5,000, 6,000 words of English, but they couldn't communicate because they had the words but didn't know how to use them. Quantity of listening. An average ESL textbook has less than 5 minutes of listening per chapter. Don't quote me on this number. I didn't look at every textbook in the world. But let's say I did an informal survey of textbooks that I've used. And usually in each chapter there are a very small handful, 2 or 3, very short listenings. None of them is longer than 3 minutes. Okay, what I could verify, a listening lesson is 20 to 45 minutes. Now, every school I've ever taught in, once a week, there was 1 unit of listening. So I would take this 2 to 3 minutes of listening clip, and we would do some sort of exercise with it. We'd play it once, fill in the blanks, play it again, check our answers. The whole thing together is about 20 to 45 minutes. You do that once a week, and you move on. And regardless of how well or badly the students did, you move on to the next one. Now, when I wasn't able to verify, this is really funny because the students now no longer use CDs. They put the CDs onto their iPhones and things like that. So it's actually very easy to just glance at it and see how many minutes of data is there. And the CD, the entire book, was 1 hour. Now that book, some programs, they'll do it per semester or they'll do a book per year. But even if you're doing 1 book per semester, you have a total of 1 hour of listening per semester. All right, so how to teach listening. Don't go back to your school and burn the textbook. Okay. I'm not suggesting a revolution. Don't go back and switch to 100% listening format. All right, because 1, you'll get fired. Okay, and 2, for example, my courses, I see my students for 2 90-minute sessions per week. That's 180 minutes. If we did 100% listening, 180 minutes a week, how many weeks until we get to 800 hours? Well, it was not a rhetorical question. I don't know. It's a lot of weeks. Okay, so even if you switch to a listening-only program, which is absolutely not going to happen, they're not going to get there. So you're definitely doing the right thing by teaching all 4 skills. Okay, so how can we incorporate listening and how can we get legitimate listening skills going? And that is we can create a serious, in red letters, serious self-study listening program. Now, serious self-study. Every school I have ever taught in has a library. They have a student learning center. They have a place where students can borrow books or they can read books, and they usually have some